Well, that number of webinar participants just keeps climbing. We officially are having the largest webinar that I think we've had here with BlueLedge, so super exciting. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to get started for people coming in. It's all good. We'll get into the conversation, but let's get started. First, I want to remind everyone about the AAERT Executive Forum, March 31st through April 1st in New Orleans. Woohoo! It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, this event is targeted more towards business members and vendors and things like that, but everyone is welcome to come. We're going to be talking about leadership and advocacy. We're going to be talking about changing legislation, best practices, all of that kind of thing. Oops, I accidentally added the word virtual in there because that was what it was last year, but it is not going to be virtual this year. It is going to be 100% in person, and we want to see everyone there. So please join the 2023 AAERT Executive Forum. You can sign up online at aaert.org. Today we are covering a court proceeding and is the 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern. So let's get kicked off. My name is Benjamin Jaffe. I have been working in the legal industry since 2014. Formerly, I was the legal technology manager over at Orange Legal. Before that, I worked in the multimedia industry. I am a certified electronic reporter and a certified deposition reporter. And yes, I was hucking AAERT's event because I am one of the board members. If you're interested in running for board or joining one of the committees, please email AAERT at aaert.org. It's a great opportunity to get involved in this industry. If you're not a member, become one. Next, joining us today is Merritt Gilbert. She is the director of BlueLedge and a certified electronic reporter, a certified deposition reporter, the certification committee chair, and has been doing digital court reporting and covering legal proceedings for more than 10 years now. She is an expert in this field, both in the depot room and in the courtroom. Then we're joined by Tori Loudon. She has been a court reporter since 2019 and a legal transcriptionist since 2001. Right now, she is an official court reporter with the Appalachian Judicial District of Georgia. She's a CER, CDR, and CET. Those are a lot of letters after your name, Tori. Congratulations, and thank you so much for joining us. Next, we have Justin Ward. He is the manager of court reporting services for the 7th Judicial Circuit of Florida out of Daytona. He is a certified electronic reporter and has been in the industry since 2006. Previous to working in court reporting, he actually worked for the clerk of courts. So thank you, Justin. And last, but certainly not least, is Phyllis Whitesell. She is an official court reporter with the 4th Judicial Circuit 4th Judicial District of Nebraska since 2021. Before that, she was a paralegal, and she's a certified paralegal from NALA, as well as a certified electronic reporter and certified electronic transcriber. Thank you so much for joining us, Phyllis, and thank you everyone for joining us. We're so happy to hear you today. I'm going to dive in and just have everybody give a little bit of your background and how your experience relates to the court proceedings and the covering of those type of events. Maybe we'll start with you, Justin.
Yeah, as you mentioned just a second ago, I've been a digital court reporter since 2006. Kind of fell into the profession. Quite literally, I was working in a courtroom where our court circuit was testing digital court reporting as a new feature, and got to know a couple of the girls and became friendly with them, and they invited me to join their team. So I jumped ship and took a leap of faith in something that I knew nothing about. And like I said, I've been there since 2006. I took over the role of digital court reporting manager in 2016, led our department, which is 4 counties in the state of Florida. And then as of September of this year, I became the manager of court reporting services. So I took over the entire court reporting services department. And I just see the overall day-to-day operations of court reporting as a whole for our circuit.
Great. And how about you, Tori?
Well, I'm Tori Lawton, and I am a certified court reporter in the state of Georgia. I became a court reporter about 4 years ago, right before the pandemic, and I've been an official reporter for about a year and a half. And prior to that, I was a transcriptionist for 18 years. So about 20 years experience with legal transcripts and that sort of thing. Totally expected to be a freelancer. And then I started covering in court, and it just kind of, the need was there. And now I cover 6 counties.
And you did mention freelance. You're a little unique of most of the official court reporters I know because you actually are a contract reporter, not an employee reporter, correct?
I am an independent contractor. My judge covers 3 of those counties, and we're very rural. So we have like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday rotation. And so when we're not busy or we don't have a trial or whatever, then I will cover in 3 other counties, my county, and then a couple of counties south of me.
Great. And Phyllis, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience in the courtroom.
Well, I guess the newbie. It's only been about a year and a half since I've held this position. I am now considered an official electronic reporter in Douglas County, Nebraska. And I guess my position started due to the stenographer shortage. My judge needed to hire somebody. And now we've hired additional reporters. And most of us, if not all, I think, are taking the BlueLedge courses.
Great. And Merritt, you were in the freelance market taking lots of hearings and proceedings in front of judges for the civil market. Can you talk about that?
Yes, exactly. I worked for a court reporting agency who had a lot of deposition work, EWOs, as well as hearings and non-jury trials. So I covered a lot of court work in that way. So I'm going to offer a little bit of a different perspective and not have the built-in equipment like the officials do in the courtroom.
Well, great. And Justin, just going back to you for a second, your courtrooms are a little different, right? They use more of a remote monitoring situation.
That's correct. Yeah, we are not physically in the courtroom. We are sometimes in a completely different building in a completely different county. So we do everything remotely from a control room.
And how many proceedings will be in front of a court reporter? Is it always 1-to-1, or are they maybe monitoring several smaller type cases, traffic, that kind of thing?
We do our best to ratio it out. There are specific proceedings that we mandate be one-on-one. If there's a jury trial or something of higher stakes per se, we'll make sure that those are monitored on a 1-to-1 ratio. Other proceedings, we may do 2, most of the time, no more than 3 simultaneous different courts at a time, but you're talking about low end things like a traffic court or citation court or something along those lines.
Great. Well, and I think that's another unique perspective. We have a lot of great perspectives here, from official employee to official contractor, management of court reporting and multiple streams to the, freelance. So I'm very excited about this. And, one of the first questions I think people have, because it sounds very scary. You're going to go into court, you're going to be in front of a judge. The lawyers are going to be in their nicest suits, and they're going to be, dressed to the nines, and people's lives or livelihood or estates matter. So, what do you do to prepare? Is there something that you do to get yourself ready before you go in the courtroom? How about you, Phyllis?
I'm lucky. I work primarily for one judge, and so it's a small team. There's a judge, and then there's a bailiff who controls the calendar of the judge and the calendar of the courtroom. So we're essentially in the same location every day. So I'm lucky. The bailiff is awesome, and so is the judge. But every day I check, usually the day before, the calendar to see what we've got going. And then that kind of gives me an idea whether we have civil cases. It's all felony cases, but we could have a domestic, we could have some civil hearings and criminal hearings, usually a mixture of all three, but every day is different. And I have that ability to check the calendar, to ask questions about if there's going to be exhibits. So I feel pretty prepared just being able to converse with both of them.
What about you, Tori?
I think it's important to have a routine. In my situation, because I'm never in the same courtroom 2 days in a row, unless
Sure.
I'm doing a jury trial, I'm packing and unpacking my equipment every single day. So I pack and unpack the bag exactly the same way. I double check, make sure I'm not leaving anything when I'm leaving. I test my equipment. I have my judge who has his staff attorney. There's usually a deputy, bailiffs, attorneys. It just really depends on whether it's a civil situation or criminal. But I even have my most rural courtroom does not even have a sound system. So
Wow.
it's super important for me to make sure that my mics are where they need to be. Now, the largest county that I cover has a sound system that I could plug directly into, but I don't prefer to do that because it's one recording. So I prefer my 4 individual mics, because then if somebody talks over each other, I can isolate them and still make out what everybody said.
And Justin, what about in your area? What does a reporter do to prepare? Is there a special piece of equipment, or is there a special way they get prepared for being more remote? I know we all have been in remote now with COVID, but that's your permanent setup.
Yeah, it is. We get calendars from our judges and judicial assistants and clerks that we base our week off of. So, each of my offices are different. We have, numerous different kind of courts that we will cover. But at a glance, we know every day what we're going to have for the week ahead, and we assign our duties based on what we see. Obviously, we all know things change on a daily basis. You could have a week-long trial that ends up playing on one day, so you never know what's going to happen.
That's good for your schedule, I bet.
Right. So we try to prepare ourselves the best that we can based on the information that we're given. We're always thrown for a loop. We're kind of out of sight, out of mind sometimes, not being in the room, so they kind of forget we're there because we're kind of just in the background doing what we're supposed to be doing. And not physically being seen and heard in the courtroom. But we've found ways to make it work and make it adapt, and we've managed to find a way to make it work. So pretty much, like I said, we just do our weekly calendars, and we kind of know day in and day out what we're going to do. We'll prepare our each courtroom docket wise the night before, so we have an idea of what we're looking at. And it also helps in case somebody calls out, that we're able to quickly get those rooms reassigned to somebody else, or myself or my assistant manager come in and we'll cover everything.
It's good to be in practice. And Merritt, Tori talked about every day setting up a new courtroom, but as a freelance court reporter, you could have 8 hearings in a day in 8 different courtrooms. So what do you do? Is there a special way you prepare, special type of equipment? Do you set up your equipment in the hallway? Like, what do you do to make sure that you're ready for a proceeding that could be in courtroom 1A, your first of the day, and the last of the day could be in 10B?
Yes, actually, on that note about room changes, that can happen too. And, because you don't work for the courthouse, you don't know exactly who to talk to in the courthouse always, but, you can always try to just ask the bailiff or whoever is available at the room you're supposed to be in, like, did this case move? It's best to try to follow the case, not necessarily the judge, because it could have been assigned to a different judge. And what's ultimately important for us when we're hired by the attorney is to make sure we are your fail safe is like, just find the person who hired you, because wherever they are is where you need to be. So they may not know where they're supposed to be either when those rooms change last minute. But if you're with them, you know you're in the right spot. But to your point, Ben, yeah, sometimes a lot of the hearings and non-jury trials I covered would be cattle calls. So one after another, the judge is hearing multiple, and there's many attorneys in the room and reporters, and you kind of have to just go up right when yours is called. And so you kind of would have to set up and be mobile and be able to quickly put out your equipment and think clearly, make sure you do everything correctly and that you're recording in all the places you need to be recording, including your backup. And yeah, it's important to have practiced that. One thing, which might be a question later, so my apologies, but one thing I had to have was my laptop stand, because sometimes I'd be setting up in the hallway waiting to be let into the room, and it's just 5 minutes before the start time, and so I need to at least start like plugging things in and testing, opening my file. So I'd have my laptop stand, and I'd kind of place my microphones and things on top of the laptop so I could kind of walk in there with my bag and my laptop stand as best as I could.
Sounds good. And I know
Gotta get creative.
Yeah, and one thing, I always know from covering these are having multiple backup recorders, one for the judge's stand, maybe one for the podium, right? Because that's your CYA, and I won't say on a webinar what that stands for, but everybody knows what I mean. And, so if you have to put one where the judge is, where the witness is, where the attorneys are asking the question, better to have more than less of those, and then spread your mics out as well. So I love that. Um, you know, uh, is there, every courtroom, of course, is set up differently, but is there a particular place you like to set up? Is there a particular, location that is best? Phyllis, do you have a set location in your courtroom, or you have a desk?
I do. I have a desk in the courtroom. I have a small office too, so when I'm not in the courtroom, but everything, I have a laptop in the courtroom. Our monitors or our microphones are pre-set up, but every morning I do go in there and do a test before the day starts. Our courtroom, they're implementing technology in the state of Nebraska. We're lucky our courtroom is one of the first, so we've got a few bells and whistles, I guess, that not everybody has. We've got some hanging TVs so that the jury can see different videos. And so I go through in the morning, make sure all the video or the audio is working and checking it. And the TVs are on. I have there's 2 microphones on the witness counsel or on the counsel tables, a monitor or a microphone on the judge's table, one at the bench, one at the witness. We have a handheld mic if we ever need to, and we've also got some hanging microphones above the jury box if there's a trial and we're doing jury selection.
Great. Well, and Tori, you're more like Merritt, where you have to, bring your own equipment. So where do you sit? How do you set yourself up? And obviously every courtroom is different, but do you have kind of a generality that you go with?
I do. I have a desk in each location, so I kind of know where I am, and it's usually in front or below the judge. He's sitting kind of higher on the bench. In 2 of the courtrooms, he's to my left, and the other one he's to my right. And then my mics go. I have 4 individual mics, and one goes with the judge, one goes on the podium, one goes at the witness, and then one goes on the end of the defense table that can catch both sets of attorneys' tables. And then I have H2N Zoom backup recorders. I have 3 of those. And I don't use 3 on like a normal plea day or whatever, but in jury trials, I definitely use all 3 of them, because you just never know. The judge can pull one on you like they did to me last month and said, oh, no, we're going to do this a little faster. We're going to put 18 people in the jury box and 18 in the gallery. There's nothing in the gallery. There's nothing in the gallery. So I have to grab the 3rd one, make sure the batteries are in there. Always have to have batteries because there's no plug-ins over there, and run across the room real fast and put it where it needs to be. And so it tends to work out. And then those are 20 feet, 360 surround sound. So if I've got an attorney that's a wanderer, I can pick him up on either one or my regular mics. So those
Great.
are very important.
Well, and just a reminder to those who are watching today, you can ask questions in the Q&A chat pod below. And we have a great question, so I just wanted to ask it. How about Merritt? How do you handle a bench or chamber conference? Obviously, we talked a little bit about setting up in a hearing room or in a regular courtroom, but what about in a chamber?
Yeah, so usually those are similar where they call you in and expect you to just go immediately on the record. So you would have to set up in the hallway for those, and you would generally you'd be sitting closer to the judge, and it's more like a conference room setup usually in judges' chambers. So yeah, you have to be able to set up in the hallway and be ready to just go in there to make sure you are with the attorney who hired you.
And what about you, Justin? How do you guys handle chambers? Is there a special connection? Do they have equipment set up in the judge's offices?
We don't. If they're going to do like a sidebar conference in their chambers, then they know that would be considered an off-the-record conversation. But all of our main courtroom proceedings, we have our control panels on each of our benches have a button for a sidebar. And what that'll do is that'll activate white noise over the PA system.
Sure.
And it'll activate a sidebar microphone that is on the bench. So as long as everybody hovers over that sidebar, my staff can listen to, transcribe, take down all that stuff that is occurring there at the sidebar. Now, if they take it outside of the courtroom, then all of our judges know that that's considered an off-the-record conversation, and our office doesn't have a way to capture that.
And Phyllis, what about you?
So if we do have an in-camera interview or to talk to a juror or something, I can take my laptop into the judge's chambers. I've taken it into the jury room before. I have a small electronic microphone that I can take in there and record that way. And we do have the same setup like Justin was saying during a trial. If they need a sidebar, we have the white noise and then the sidebar mic that they huddle around.
Well, good. And you know, Phyllis, I'm sure you have to deal with, you were talking about equipment earlier. What about dealing with IT staff and those who maybe requisition or install or service your equipment? How do you work with them? I'm sure we have some court reporters thinking about that right now. Like, what if my mic doesn't work and the judge wants to go on the record?
That's the million-dollar question. We don't have the designated IT people. That's sometimes the downfall of working in government. And knock on something, I haven't had that problem yet. There are some emergency phone calls we can make. Usually it's making a phone call to the state, which happens to be in Lincoln, which is about an hour from where my office is or my judge is. It's just kind of a fly by the seat of your pants to try and get it to work if it should happen. My judges, I think so far I've encountered people that are very patient because everybody knows every once in a while their computers will be wonky. I mean, if it ever came down that mine did not work, it would probably have to be rescheduled or go to another courtroom or to see if another court reporter, a stenographer, somebody could come in and cover.
And that happens, right? Every computer comes down, no matter what methodology of taking down the record. You know, Merritt, related to a sidebar, somebody asked the question, what do you do about white noise if you've brought your own computer or your own microphones? How do you make sure you're capturing the conversation and not just getting a lot of static?
So first thing from my experience with sidebars is the judge and attorneys will let you know whether or not they want that on the record. So sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. And if you're saying if there is white noise, how do you make sure you're getting clear audio?
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, it's important that you have microphones in as many places as you can get it, but one should be right at the judge's bench, and that one would be the one that they can, you know, speak next to and talk over the bench right there in a whispered tone. And if you feel that the quality of your recording as your confidence monitoring is not good because of the white noise for any reason, then you need to say something and figure out a solution for that, whether it be turn off the white noise and just whisper a little bit lower. But if they want it on the record, you got to make sure it's a clear recording.
Well, and that you bring up a good, a good point. How do you communicate with the judge, the clerk, the bailiff if something goes wrong, or you just need to tell them something, or is there a way? Is there proper protocol? Maybe Justin, you're the furthest probably away from the judge. So how do your reporters contact back?
We have in the locations where we're physically in the same building, we have telephone extensions for the clerk, the bailiff, and the judge's bench. So if there is a problem, we tend to try the clerk first. If that doesn't work, or if they don't answer, their phone may be on silent and they may not hear it ring, whatever it may be, then we'll go to the judge. Same thing could happen then. Their phone may be on silent. They may just ignore the phone call. If that's the case, then we go to the bailiff. We have a few things that we can do. And we realize if we cannot get a hold of the courtroom directly, then we'll call the sheriff's office control room in whatever courthouse it may be and just say, hey, we need you to radio the bailiffs in this courtroom and tell them, this attorney needs to stand still, or, the judge needs to turn, different microphones on, or whatever the problem may be. So we have a backup to a backup to a backup to a backup. We have multiple ways of getting in there. We could also email them directly if we needed to, but not everybody always pays attention to their email. So usually we always try the phone call method first. But usually we can get a hold of somebody in all of our courtrooms within about 30 seconds if there's a problem.
And Tori, what about you? Is there a proper way to address your judge? What would you say to other reporters? Maybe they're new as an official. How would you say they should best communicate with those staff?
My judge sits a little bit higher, and in one of the courtrooms, he can't see me. The other two, he can. So I tend to raise my hand just as high as I can get it. And the clerk is usually behind me, so she will definitely see if he doesn't, if he's doing something else or facing another way. But if I have an issue, I tend to direct it toward the judge. And I will say, Judge, Your Honor, or and one time I actually had to stand up because everybody was doing their thing and not paying attention. And so I actually stood up to get his attention. That I don't remember even what it was now, but it's just
the
really
record's important. You got to let them know if something's happening.
And absolutely. I mean, you have to. I mean, if something is happening, you have to stop. I mean, and I'm responsible for my own equipment, so I've got my software guy on, speed dial, but he's in California and I'm not. I'm in Georgia. So, it's really on me to make sure that, this is and confidence monitoring. Oh my gosh. It is so, so important. I have one mic, one ear mic, similar to what yours is, except mine's just a little over the ear. And I am constantly adjusting volume to make sure I can hear, and I will stop everything if somebody is too far away or something happened.
What about you, Phyllis? Is there a special way you interact with your judge?
I mean, my judge has made it clear that this is the record. I need to make sure that I can hear if somebody's not speaking into the microphone, if they, she's like, you need to interrupt and say, speak up. Because she's focusing on other things, and I do the confidence monitoring to make sure I can hear, but she's very good about communication. And if I need to ask somebody to speak up, that's something I still struggle with. I don't want to interrupt the judge, but she's like, this is your record, so make sure you can hear. And I've learned from other stenographers too. I've asked them what they do, and the same thing. They're like, it's okay to be polite about it, but just, can you speak up? And it's helpful to me to talk to other people who are in the courtroom and how they handle things as well.
And one of the big things is going on and off the record, right? You have to know when is the appropriate time that you're on the record, because that's when the transcript starts, and when to go off. So, Merritt, what are your indicators of when to go on and off the record?
I go by what the judge has indicated, which if any of you are familiar with the deposition market, you know, sometimes it can be a little confusing. What am I supposed to follow here? And there is proper protocol for that. But I won't get into it this second. But when you're in the courtroom, it's easier in a way because you can just go by what the judge says.
Have any of you ever showed up and there's been two reporters for the same case? Like somebody, one attorney is trying to bring in a reporter to supplement you, or, you know, because they want their record made? Merritt, I saw you nod your head. Any of our official reporters? Yes, Justin. Okay, let's Justin, you can answer that one.
Yeah, it was actually an event that we were not required to record, but we can still see and hear the room. And there was mass confusion because there was 3 different sets of attorneys, and all 3 of them hired their own court reporter, and all 3 of them set up in the room, and all 3 of them were trying to take it at the same time. So that was probably the most interesting thing that we've seen, and it was for a family law event that occurred.
Well, that
So,
just sounds entertaining.
it was, yeah, it was quite entertaining for them to try to figure out who was going to be the official record. So,
All right, so story time with Justin, you know, after this, but we have lots to make it through. Merritt, I know you've probably been one of those reporters, one of those 3 trying to elbow your way in. So what do you normally do in that situation?
I try to just stick by the first one there is the one who stays. And because this happens with depositions too sometimes. And, you know, reporters will want to be the one to stay. They want to get the pages and, you know, just be polite about it. But I think it's the first person who got there. But the number one thing to remember is don't just leave because the other reporter or the other attorney who hired that other reporter told you to leave. Only leave if your client, the person who hired your office, has told you, you know, you should leave. So that in case they come and are like, where's my reporter, you know.
So I'm gonna move on to a little bit a different part, but I want to get a few of these questions answered. One of them was, how do you handle a playback, read back, repeat back? Everybody has a different name for it, and there's been several questions, but you know, maybe Phyllis, what do you do for that?
We use the Liberty recording system, and there is a playback feature in it. A lot of the times my judge will ask the attorneys to just rephrase the question, because a lot of times I've encountered or observed that the question becomes so long and convoluted that the person is confused about what's being asked anyway, so she'll just ask them to rephrase. I've had to do a playback a couple of times, but it's pretty simple. I just go to the playback. Since I've annotated everything, I'm usually able to find it pretty quickly and just play it back.
What about you, Justin, in your remote situation?
yeah, so our software that we use has a playback function. Pretty much what we do is we're able to get the request, and we're able to stream that back into the courtroom via whatever PA system sound that there would be. So it would cycle back in through the courtroom and play over the PA system.
Okay, great. And Merritt or Tori, anything you guys do in your kind of more mobile environment? Tori?
I have a SonicClear. My software is SonicClear, and it has a playback. I tend to use the playback if it's very long, like Phyllis was saying, it's very long and convoluted. If it's pretty short, if they've just kind of lost their place, then I'll just read it back. So it's no big deal.
Well, there you go. That answered a lot of questions. The other questions, a lot of people have some questions about backup recorders. What happens if somebody puts a paper on top of it, the judge doesn't want to understand, the attorneys don't want it on the podium, and then do you have a favorite backup recorder, one that you love? Because a lot of people want to know their recommendations. Merritt, what do you do about backup recorders?
I very similar to what Tori explained earlier. I would at least have two, and make sure that I'm placing it strategically. If there is a spot where I wasn't expecting to have to reach, although I try to have the long cables, as well as I wanted to mention this earlier, gaffer's tape is great if you're going to be there a long time and have time to set up, and you can tape down the cords, that's great. But to finish your answer, I had never had a judge get frustrated with my recording, my microphones and my recorders, but I heard that had happened many, many years ago. I think they're much more used to them now. But if they get frustrated, just be as polite as possible. Make sure you're still recording clear audio, but try to follow what they say in tandem.
Great. Anybody else have a favorite? We heard Tori's, so I'm not gonna make her repeat herself. How about Phyllis? Do you have backup recorders? What's your favorite?
Well, the way it's set up is that it's not recording onto the laptop. We have a couple drives, I guess, that it goes to. And then at the end of the night or end of the day, whenever I'm done recording, the state has a cloud that I back all the audio up to. So it's on the cloud. It's on another drive that's in our county that the judges have access to. So it's in a couple different spots.
Great. Well, that's wonderful. And I know whenever I was out there, I love the Sony backup recorders, but any of the big name brands, Sony, Olympus, Marantz, Zoom, they all have really good backup recorders. Sometimes it's just to try it and make sure it works for your situation. Some of them have longer batteries, some of them have wider pickup patterns. Some of them do a 360, some of them do a 180. The same, we have a question here about microphones, lapel mics. It's just, you have to do what's best for your situation. I will say lapels are harder because attorneys tend to want to move around the courtroom. And so a lot of people use omnidirectional microphones, or at least cardioid microphones on stands, or the gooseneck microphones, or something. If you have only lapel microphones in your kit, a lot of time what I used to do was I'd wrap them around the goosenecks in the courtroom and attach it right on the side of it, so that as they lean into talking to the gooseneck, they're leaning into talking to my microphone as well. That was just me, but anybody else run into that? Merritt, you moved around a lot.
You gave great tips on that. I totally agree. Lapel microphones just aren't ideal for the courtroom. And so boundary microphones and the gooseneck are definitely preferable.
Wonderful. So, moving on from there, I want to get into the making of the transcript. Tori, you make your own transcripts, I'd have to imagine. You're a CER and a CET. So, are there special things you do to ensure you have the best transcript?
Yes, I handle all of my transcripts. I have a team of transcriptionists and a proofreader, and my annotations are gold to them. I feel like since I was a transcriptionist for 18 years, I do all of the things that I wish reporters had done for me. And my subs tend to say, we are so spoiled, because if they get something that somebody else recorded, they'll be like, oh my gosh, we know this isn't yours. So I'm just very, very particular, and I get all of the speaker IDs and the spellings, and I stop people to get spellings. And it's just so important. And I cannot stand indiscernibles and inaudibles, and it's got to be something really, really drastic if my transcript has one in it. I just can't. I can't do it. I'm a perfectionist. So
What about you, Phyllis? Do you do your own transcripts?
I do, but I mean, I'm frequently asking questions of stenographers in our building, because every transcript seems like it's got maybe something slightly different, some encounter that maybe you don't see on a normal basis. So they've been a wealth of knowledge. Also, if I come across spellings, I'll ask after the proceeding is over how to spell something. But I do have a proofreader, and that was the best piece of advice too that I was given. But I type up my transcript and then have a proofreader check it over.
And Justin, what about in your department? Do your reporters make the transcript?
We don't. In our circuit, we do not. We do not transcribe. So everything is on whoever the ordering party would be. So if there's a criminal hearing and an attorney wants a typed transcript of it, they'll order the audio from us, and then they take it to whatever court reporting transcriptionist that they choose. And that's how they'll produce the official transcript from our records.
And I know one of the hardest transcripts to make is the jury selection. And Tori, I'm redirecting this at you because you already brought it up. But I mean, talk me through that, or maybe talk some of us off the ledge of when you got to make that complicated. How do you handle that? How do you keep track of, I think you were saying 36 people trying to do a rapid jury selection?
Well, jury selection is not my favorite. I will just go ahead and say that right up front. Again, the biggest thing is making sure that your backup recorders are close by and that you can use those in the event your other mics are not. I always ask for a panel list from the clerk. Where my judge is really good, and the attorneys always like this too, is to put them in order. So they're in order, and I know there's 9 on the front row, there's 9 on the second row, and then there's 9 in the gallery and 9 more right behind them. So I try to keep track. And also our attorneys I'll request that they will say, they have like their little charts that they make, and I will say, if you could say their name, thank you, Miss whoever. So that's very helpful. I can, if it's only the 18 in the box, they're sitting straight in front of me, so I can pretty much keep track. It's just, it's not the best fun. It's not my favorite. Yeah.
Well, another thing that, is complicated and depends on the courtroom you're in is exhibits. Phyllis, do you handle that? Does your clerk handle that? How do you guys deal with exhibits in your district?
I do. And again, my judge is, we're starting to go to some electronic exhibits, which our courtroom has the ability to have offered and received. So yes, I will reach out to the attorneys and ask, I need your exhibits by a certain amount or certain day. Our trial orders also say they need to be to the court reporter by a certain day. The bailiff will reinforce that. So they get it multiple ways. The judge will reinforce it. In our courtroom, they get it multiple ways. I have a way to electronically mark the exhibits. I keep an exhibit list. The judge, the day of the time or the day of the hearing, I'll make sure that the judge's computer is logged on so she can have the exhibits. I give her a copy of the list, and then the attorneys have their copies as well. So yes, I'm responsible for that.
And that's different, Merritt, I know, because you and I did some of this in the same area. The clerks handled it when you were going in, correct?
Yeah, so I never had access to the exhibits, so they would be mentioned on the record. And so something I would always just be even more diligent on than normal, because it's also important for depositions as well, is to get the description of the exhibit when they're talking about it. Make sure you've annotated it, and if you need to ask off the record, to the clerk, can you tell me what that description was, so that you can have it for your index.
But what about you, Justin? Is it collected by the judge or the clerk?
All of this area.
Okay, great. You were just breaking up a little bit, Justin. Maybe one more time at that.
Yeah. And the clerk is for record.
Okay, well, I think you said the clerk of the courts kept it. It was a little hard, but no worries. I think that's the same as my experience there. And Tori, how about you in your area?
In the 3 counties that I cover that are larger than where I'm an official, the clerk scans them to the evidence clerk, and I just email them when I need them, and they'll send them to me in a nice PDF. In my circuit, I am responsible for them. So there's a trial, I have to I have a file box on wheels. Thankfully, the deputies sometimes will help me out if there's just too much for me to carry. I have to bring them home, I have to scan them so that I'll have them for my transcripts. And then I have an evidence locker, in my county where my judge is located that I can take and put the originals, so I don't have to keep them all here. And then things like, that I don't want, like an axe or, drugs or guns or something like that, that usually goes, they will substitute in a picture of it for the transcript. And then the DA's office will take, they'll tease me and say, hey, do you want this? And I'm like, no. So, so they will take charge of those, and I'll just have a picture for my transcript.
Back to transcripts for a second. Justin, you said you guys don't handle the transcripts, but how did the rest of you deal with orders? How do you know? Do you have to wait for it to come officially through the court system? Do you ask the attorneys? Is it mandatory in your area that you always produce a transcript? Phyllis, how do transcripts work in your area?
Not mandatory. So if they want a transcript of just a court hearing, I can do that. They'll email me. There's a form that they can fill out. Again, that comes to me if it's an appeal. The notice of appeal is filed with our clerk of district court. Sometimes the attorneys will send a courtesy copy. Otherwise, we rely on the clerk of court to let us know when that appeal's been filed and if a precipice has been filed with it. And then we have state statute. The statutes specify how much time we have for a turnaround, depending on what type of a case it was.
What about you, Tori?
Yes, we have in criminal cases, we have mandatory transcripts for certain types of hearings. In those larger counties, they don't do as many transcripts, like they don't do misdemeanor pleas or probation revocations, where I do in my circuit. So those are all mandatory. And then civil cases are requested by the attorneys. And then, of course, sometimes the DA's office will request those hearings that we don't do mandatory.
Great. And Merritt, what about you when you're working maybe for an attorney directly instead of working for the court system?
So my agency had we have to get the order on the record or in writing policy. So I just, because it's easier for me, and usually it wasn't really appropriate to ask on the record when you're in the courtroom, I would just email the attorney afterward, or attorneys, asking if they'd like to order the transcript. So I'd have that in writing.
Not that it's right, but I have seen reporters chasing around the attorneys with their backup recorder.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, in the, elevator going down together, sometimes just pull out your backup recorder and ask them. That works too.
There you go. Well, we've used up almost all of our time, so I'm going to do one final question from me, and then we'll go to the lots of questions from everyone else. We'll try and get through as many as we can. I really want to be cognizant of our panelists' time. They've been so great for us, and I can't keep them here all night, although I wish. There's tons of great questions. But I'm just going to let everybody do their last, 1 minute kind of elevator pitch of, based on your reporting experience, what would be the one, maybe two pieces of advice you would give to a new reporter or somebody going in and taking a court proceeding for the first time? And Justin, I'm going to start with you, my friend.
I was ever given. Do not pray out. This is our record. This is our recording. We are responsible for it. One thing that
Justin, we're still having a hard time hearing you, but I did think I heard you say never be afraid to speak up. Did I get that right? And this is our record. We need to protect it. Was there anything else?
Just we can only capture that we're given. So you have to speak up if you cannot keep protect the record. I mean, this is one job, our biggest duty is to capture this record. Don't be afraid to speak up if you need.
Yes, don't be afraid. It is our record, and it's the best record we can produce. That's very, very important. Merritt, I'm going to let you go next.
Okay, so I would like to make my last point about speaker designations. So for those who are more familiar with depositions and non-court work, you're most of the time going to be taking down testimony. And it's a lot easier for the transcriptionist or you, if you're transcribing later, to figure out who was Q, who was A, back and forth. But when you're in a courtroom, it's mostly colloquy, unless you're in testimony. So those speaker designations are more important than ever for the transcriptionist.
And let's go to Tori.
I would say relax, but focus. Yeah. And always confidence monitor and always test your equipment. I don't care if it's been set up there for a week. Test your equipment. You never know if the nice little lady that's coming in to clean the courtroom pushed a button with her duster. You just don't know. So always test. It might seem redundant. It might seem like, boring or whatever. It is so important because you don't want to hit that record button and something's not working.
And Phyllis, take us home.
Well, I want to agree with what Justin and Tori said. I 100% agree with that. I think there's always going to be somebody around you that's got more experience than you, that's been through a lot more than you, that understands more than you. And I think it's to always ask questions, to not be afraid to ask other people what they've experienced, how they've handled it. And just communication is the key, especially we have a small team that I'm with, and if we didn't communicate with each other on a daily basis, or it could be unpleasant. So just communication and what they both said.
So before we get into questions, I want to thank Merritt, Justin, Tori, and Phyllis for joining us today. Thank you all so much for your insight, your experience, your knowledge. I know this is valuable because I have an entire list of questions. Normally by now I put up the slide that says, ask your questions. But I don't need to do that because I have a lot of them. Keep them coming. We're going to spend probably 10, maybe 12 minutes getting through as many of these as we possibly can. So I'm just going to fire away at rapid, and somebody jump in and answer these, please. How do you get spellings and terminology when you're in a courtroom? Tori.
In my annotations, when I'm doing my annotations, if I have a question, I put PH in parentheses, just like what I would in the transcript, or I put like 3 question marks. And then at the end, I will grab them and search for those question marks so that I can update my annotations. So before I give them to my transcriptionist, they don't know that I had a bunch of spelling questions. And sometimes I'll handwrite it too. I have a notepad that's right next to me, and I'll handwrite it so I can get up and chase somebody if I have to.
Well, I was going to ask, Merritt, do you chase them down if you're working as a freelance reporter?
Yeah, so I believe in the deposition world, you ask off the record. You ask off the record in a court situation as well, but it may not be as easy to chase them down in a courtroom situation. They might be out the door before you can even pack up your stuff. So depending on, you kind of have to feel out the judge sometimes. It's a little more appropriate to ask on the record after the proper noun is said.
Okay, and Merritt, another one back to you. And does your laptop table have wheels? And if not, just quick, how did you get it and where did you get it?
Pengad was the brand I had, but I also had another brand I found on Amazon. But Pengad is just light and easy. And they even have it so you can stand. It's great. And there's also little accessories that make like little trays on the laptop stand where you can put like the backup recorder and things as you're moving. So I hope that helps.
And earlier we heard Justin talk about calling down and making sure that people are talking over each other, that they get the bailiff involved. But Phyllis, what do you do if people are talking over each other and it's really hard and if the judge doesn't step in, do you?
Yes, I have. But my judge is also very good at controlling her courtroom, and she does not allow for that. Especially people usually start to talk over each other once they've gotten upset or just they're amped about something. So she's been very good at stepping in. I've had to say it before as well. And that's pretty easy to do, because if you can't hear it and you can't tell who's who, it can be very frustrating when you're trying to type up the transcript.
And I'm going to ask this one to Tori, since you were a transcriber for so long. Is transcribing a thing? Well, we know it is because you did it for a long time, but also, is it a lucrative career? Can somebody do this and, make enough of a living?
I was a transcriptionist for 18 years, and I was divorced, single mom with 2 kids, and I was able to support myself and my children, and I was the team mom, room mom, band mom, all the things. It allows you to have the flexibility. It's not as lucrative as court reporting is with the courtroom and the transcripts, but I did it for 18 years and I loved it. It was great. It allowed me to be with my kids and, gave me the flexibility.
All right, so I'm going to ask this question differently only because I'm biased. How do you deal with attorneys and those who are unfamiliar with our methodology of taking down the record and are used to other methodologies? This person used traditional, but actually to me, traditional is old pen writers. So stenographers today, as much as I think they are amazing and have an art of speed of what they do, they're not the traditional. There are still pen writers out there. So, but with that being said, I've gone on my little soapbox for the day. But what do you do if an attorney is unfamiliar with your methodology?
I
Who do
just
I?
I reassure them of the quality, the end product, the transcript, that they will have a very accurate transcript at the end of this because of everything I'm doing to make sure I'm securing the record.
I know we did the pre-session and I can't remember who was doing it. They said their judge brags to other judges about having the digital. That was you, Tori?
That was
Tell us
mine.
about that for a minute.
Yeah, the judges all go to these seminars together, and my judge has 1 county, and the 3 judges rotate in this circuit, and they kind of pick on him. Oh, how's your little circuit, judge? How's your little county? So he was so excited to be able to go and say, I've got a digital reporter. Do you? So, but I do get a lot of questions. It's rural, and you don't have the little box. You're not speaking into the little mask. What's going on? So I have this little spiel that I tell them. I was like, that's just another. This is a newer method of taking all of the methods are important, and we need everyone. We tend to do the same academics. It's just our method of taking down the record is different. So I never want to bash the other methods, because goodness knows there's such a shortage that we need everyone. But that's just the way I explain it. Is we all go academic wise, we do the same thing. It's just our method of takedown is different.
And everybody comes to this differently, right? I mean, Phyllis, you were a paralegal. I mean, you went through more schooling and probably more preparation in the legal field than many who start this court reporting industry. So, how did you deal with it when you were a new reporter in your jurisdiction?
I feel like I still am a new reporter. And the Midwest is pretty conservative. I had never heard of electronic reporters before I did this. The majority are stenographers that are in Omaha and in Douglas County, Nebraska. I guess I haven't encountered people questioning the mode of what's being done in the courtroom. I think they trust that if the judge is allowing this, if the state is allowing it, that it must be credible. I do think people probably still prefer a stenographer just because it's what they know, but I haven't had anybody that's an attorney has said that to me directly. And I hope that they trust that the system works.
And I think we all believe this, that voice writers are impressive, stenographers are impressive. There are some digital reporters who type 140 words a minute. I find them impressive. Some of this new technology with ASR is impressive, and some of it is still in the very early stages, and every once in a while we see the errors of that as well. But I mean, the truth is, they're all valid ways to start making the record, and everybody goes back and proofs. Everyone goes back and makes sure that their record is perfect, no matter what, no matter how fast they are. So I just think, we need to all be in this championing together. So I love that everybody here agrees with that. Justin, you had a specific question. Are your reporters in the same room? Are they at home? Are they in different offices? How are they organized?
Our office from home, and it varies by office location. open air.
So I think I heard you say that you guys are all in certain locations. It's a group of people, but they're all wearing their headphones so they can hear, and it's not a bunch of noise going on. Did I get that right?
Yes, I just switched my microphone, so hopefully this makes
Oh, I
it
can
better.
hear you again, my
Okay,
friend.
good. There we go. All right.
I just want to say, Ben, unless you're hearing something different, how are you getting as much as you're getting?
I'm lip reading
You have
here. I'm
incredible
doing
ears.
well.
Sorry. Yes, you're correct. We are all together in one office location. Individual desks, everyone wears headphones, so there's no, crossover of what's going on. But we have no remote work. Everyone's on location in each office.
And we only have, I'm going to go 3 more minutes because I respect all y'all's time. So we're going to get the last couple questions in. This one quickly for Tori. How do you suggest researching spellings if you didn't get them at the proceeding?
There's a number of ways that I do that. I will use Google, of course, that is your best friend, and Facebook. And there was even one, I had one that it was a foreign name, like a dignitary of some sort. And I actually took the recording and asked Siri how to spell and played it. And do you know, Siri got it. So that you just have to use, you have to be very creative. Very creative. You can search all sorts of things on the internet, but that particular time, it was, and I never would have spelled it the way it was spelled either. So that was great.
Great. Well, I'm just looking down these questions. Let's see. How long does it take to become a court reporter? What is your recommendations on that? Obviously, we're doing this for BlueLedge. BlueLedge is a training program for digital court reporters that can take anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks of academic training, and then a certain amount of time, depending if you want to transcribe, of practice and being in the field, shadowing, all of that. Being a stenographer or a voice writer, it's much more about getting your speed down. So you still take those same kind of academic hours, and sometimes you have to take different academic hours for a degree, but a lot of the time is being spent on practicing typing and practicing stroking or getting faster, saying it, voice modulating it. Merritt, you went to voice writing school. You had to learn how to voice modulate.
Yep, you have to basically learn your own new language for both steno and voice in a way, different tricks and things that make you faster. And yes, stenographers they're just incredible. They have to spend a lot of time getting their speed up on that machine. So it's pretty incredible what they do.
And I would agree. It's amazing.
And there's a learning curve on the CAT software too. So.
And I have to say, don't be worried. No matter what methodology you are learning today, you will have a job into perpetuity. Does anybody disagree with that? No, exactly. There's such a need.
I turn down work so often. I wish I could clone myself.
Well, maybe there'll be more people inspired to join the industry from this webinar. And it is 5 minutes past 9. So I'm going to thank you again, Merritt Gilbert, Justin Ward, Phyllis Whitesell, and Tori Lawton. Thank you all so much for joining us. This was super informative. Everybody, I think, walked away learning something new. I know I did. If you're a freelancer trying to learn more about being an official who wants to understand more about the freelance life, if you've never been in the courtroom before, you've been in the courtroom forever, this is just a great opportunity to learn more, to hear from our various experts in the area, and to walk away hoping to be more encouraged. And I encourage you to get out there and tackle that court work. You learn something by doing. And so thank you everybody for joining us, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
You.